Hello, my dear friends. Hello, my dear listeners. How are you all? I hope you are doing best to serve your duties with utmost honesty and love. And we are going to be successful in this journey with the grace of our Lord. So, let's start a new chapter in our journey through the life of Sri Ramkrishna Paramhansa Dev. In the last chapter, we came to know how he have surrendered everything to Ma Sarda. And what is next? Let's find out. At the end of his sadhana, about a year later, Sri Ramakrishna, through his contact with Shambhu Charan Malik of Calcutta, who, among other scriptures, was acquainted with the Bible, decided to realize the Divine Mother by a new method, viz., Christianity. Shambhu was well known for his generosity. He had a garden close to the Dakshineshwar Kali temple, which Sri Ramakrishna frequently visited. In the course of the intimacy which thus grew up, Shambhu came to regard Sri Ramakrishna with sincere love and esteem, and after Mathur's death, it was he who came forward to serve the master and gladly supplied all his wants. He addressed Sri Ramakrishna as Guruji or teacher. The master would sometimes resent this, saying, "Who is a guru and to whom? You are my guru." But Shambhu would not give in and persisted in using the epithet till the end. Though not a Christian, he used to read the Bible to Sri Ramakrishna, who thus came to know Christ and Christianity. So, when the desire to realize the Christian ideal arose in his mind, the Divine Mother fulfilled it in a strange way. Without any struggle on his part, one day the master was in the parlor of the garden house of Jadunath Malik at Dakshineshwar, on the wall of which were many beautiful portraits, one of them being Christ's. Sri Ramakrishna was looking attentively at the picture of the Madonna with the Divine Child and reflecting on the wonderful life of Christ, when he felt as though the picture had become animated and that light were emanating from the figures of Mary and Christ and entering into him, altogether changing his mental outlook. When he realized that his Hindu ideas were being pushed into a corner by this onus of new ones, he tried his best to stop it and eagerly prayed to the Divine Mother, "What is it that thou art doing to me, Mother?" But in vain. His love and regard for the Hindu gods were swept away by this tidal wave, and in their state a deep regard for Christ and the Christian Church filled his heart and opened to his eyes the vision of Christian devotees burning incense and candles before the figure of Jesus in the churches and offering unto him the eager outpouring of their hearts. Returning to the Dakshineshwar temple, he was so engrossed in these thoughts that he forgot to visit the Divine Mother in the temple for 3 days. Those ideas held sway in his mind. On the fourth day, as he was walking in the Panchavati, he saw an extraordinary looking person of serene aspect approaching him with his gaze intently fixed on him. He knew him at once to be a man of foreign extraction. He had beautiful large eyes, and though the nose was a little flat, it is no way marred the cum lines of his face. Sri Ramakrishna was charmed and wondered who he might be. Presently, the figure drew near, and from the inmost recesses of Sri Ramakrishna's heart there went up the note, "There is the Christ who poured out his heart's blood for the redemption of mankind and suffered agonies for its sake. It is none else but that Master Yogen Jesus, the embodiment of love." Then the Son of Man embraced Sri Ramakrishna and became merged in him. The Master lost outward consciousness in Samadhi, realizing his union with the Brahman with attributes. After some time, he came back to the normal plane. Thus was Sri Ramakrishna convinced that Jesus Christ was an incarnation of the Lord. Long after, in discussing Christ with his disciples who were able to speak English, he asked, "Well, you have read the Bible. Tell me what it says about the features of Christ. What did he look like?" They answered, "We have not seen this particularly mentioned anywhere in the Bible. But Jesus was born among the Jews, so he must have been fair with large eyes and an aquiline nose." Sri Ramakrishna only remarked, "But I saw his nose was a little flat. Who knows why?" Not attaching much importance to these words at the time, the disciples, after the passing away of Sri Ramakrishna, heard that there were three descriptions extant Christ's features, and one of these actually described him as flat-nosed. It will be worthwhile to note here Sri Ramakrishna's opinion of Buddha and other great founders of religion. About Buddha, he shared the general notion of the Hindus that he was an incarnation of God. He used to offer him his sincere devotion and worship, and believed that in the holy triad at the temple of Jagannath, it was the Lord Buddha's personality that was still worshipped. He had a great regard for the sacramental food of Jagannath, which, like the water of Ganges, he considered as supremely purifying. Hearing about the toleration of all religions in the temple at Puri, he was at one time eager to go there, but knowing the possibility of his body succumbing to the shock of associations which the place was sure to hold for him, for one incarnation, Sri Chaitanya, had passed away there, he refrained from going. On another occasion, he remarked, "There is not the least doubt about Lord Buddha's being an incarnation. There is no difference between his doctrines and those of the Vedic Janakanda. We have every reason to believe that he spoke thus because of his supernatural insight." About the Tirthankars who founded the Jain religion and the 10 Sikh Gurus, Sri Ramakrishna heard a good deal in his later life from the lips of representatives of those communities, came to entertain a great regard for them. In his room at Dakshineshwar there were a small statue of Tirthankara Mahavira, a portrait of Christ, before which was burnt morning and evening. But he was never heard to speak of the Tirthankars or Sikh Gurus as incarnations of God. Of the latter, he used to say, "They are all incarnations of the saintly king Janaka. I have heard it said by the Sikhs Just before attaining liberation, he was possessed with the idea of doing good to the world. So, he was born successively as the 10 Gurus of the Sikhs, and after founding the Sikh religion was united forever with the supreme Brahman. There is no reason to disbelieve this. In the state of divine communion, at the end of all his sadhanas, there came to him many intuitive perceptions, some of which were in relation to himself, others in connection with spirituality in general. Though these revelations were the outcome of supersensuous perception, yet we may try to express them in terms of human reasoning. About himself, he came to the following conclusions. First, that he was an incarnation of God, a specially commissioned personage, whose spiritual achievements were for the benefit of others. Comparing his own life with that of the usual seeker after truth, he was convinced of the great gulf that lay between. He saw that the ordinary aspirant, after a lifelong struggle, was satisfied with realization of any one aspect of the Lord, whereas he could not rest till he had realized him in all. He was aware that it took him an incredibly short time to attain realization of any particular phase. That could not but mean that there was some peculiarity in his mental constitution which made it relatively easy for him to attain the supreme spiritual level. He was forced to acknowledge that he was exceptional, that his extraordinary spiritual struggle and realizations were not for himself but to usher in a new era of spiritual unfoldment and to show mankind how to overcome the obstacles on the way to realization. Secondly, he knew that he had always been a free soul, that the various sadhanas through which he had passed were not really necessary for him as they were for others. So, the term mukti or liberation was not applicable to him. From another angle, liberation was equally impossible for him, for just so long as there were beings who considered themselves bound. The incarnation would have to come and show them the way out of their bondage. As Shri Ramkrishna used to say, a zamindar's office will have to run to any part of the estate where there is trouble. He used to tell his disciples that next time he would have to reincarnate himself there, pointing to the northwest. Some of these disciples, among whom was the great actor dramatist Girish Chandra Ghosh of Bengal, have said that the master also gave a hint as to the time this would occur, saying, 200 years later I shall have to go there. Then many will be liberated, and those who will fail then will have to wait for a long time. Thirdly, he came to foresee the time of his passing. One day, in an ecstatic mood, he spoke of it thus to the Holy Mother: when you find me taking the food touched by a non Brahmin, passing nights in Calcutta, and feeding another and eating the remnants, then know that the day for my leaving this body is near at hand. These words of the Master were literally fulfilled. Another day, also in an ecstatic mood at Dakshineshwar, he said to the Holy Mother, towards the end I shall take nothing but liquid milk preparations. This statement too came true. About spiritual matters in general, the following were his convictions. First, as the result of his realization through all forms of discipline, he was firmly convinced that all religions were true, that every doctrinal system represented a path to God. The demonstration of this seems to be the special object of Sri Ramakrishna's advent into the world. He was the first incarnation who, so far as history goes, went through all the different varieties of religious practices in order to prove that fact. If universality be the touchstone of greatness, Sri Ramakrishna stands conspicuous among the great ones. Secondly, the three great systems of thought known as dualism, qualified monism, and monism, Dvaita, Vishishta Advaita, and Advaita, he perceived to be but different stages in man's progress towards the goal. He held that they were not contradictory but complementary, being studied, being suited to different mental outlooks. The far reaching consequences of this realization will be patent upon reflection to all. Every student of religion knows that a storm of conflicting opinions has been raised among scholars over these progressive systems, not perceiving their underlying harmony. Every sect has tried interpretation from one point of view to the exclusion of the other two, with the result that philosophical discussions have become a bugbear to some or driven others in despair to agnosticism or atheism. Hence, the need of a prophet who, by personal realization of the inner significance of all of them, would remove misunderstanding. The following are some of his statements. The Advaita is the last word in realization. It is something to be felt in samadhi, for it transcends mind and speech. The mind and intellect can comprehend and put in terms of language the range of thought up to the Vishishta Advaita and no farther. In its perfection, the absolute and manifestation are seen to be equally real. The Lord's name, his abode, and he himself are found to be composed of the one spiritual substance. Everything is spiritual, the variance being only in form. For the ordinary man with strong attachment to the senses, the dualistic forms of religion in which are embodied some amount of material support like music and symbols are useful. As to action and inaction, he had to say a man whose mind is absolutely pure naturally goes beyond action. He cannot work even if he tries to, or the Lord does not allow him to work. Just as when a young wife is going to be a mother, she is given less and less work to do, and when the child is born, she gives up household work altogether and is busied exclusively with the child. But the ordinary man must try to do his duties unattached, depending on the Lord, like the maidservant who does everything for her master but knows in her heart that her home is elsewhere. This is known as karma yoga. One should, as far as possible, take the name of the Lord and meditate on him while discharging one's everyday duties in an unattached way. Thirdly, Sri Ramakrishna realized the mother's wish that through him she would found a new order comprising those who would uphold universal doctrines illustrated in his life. Lastly, his spiritual insight told him that those who were having their last birth, those who had sincerely called on the Lord at least once, must come to him. The reader is at liberty to take this statement in a universal sense or in a more personal way as he chooses. So, my dear friends, today we are stopping here. Sorry, I get emotional uh, while reading this. Really lucky to serve you all in this way. I am really thankful to my parents, my Guru, and my Lord, or I must say, the Paramatman who has chosen, who has given me the chance, who has given me the chance so that I am able to read it out, so that it it may bring a little bit of peace to your heart, to your mind, so that with all this guidance we all can find our own way to reach Paramatman or the Brahma. So we are going to start a new chapter in the next episode. Till then, be happy, be jolly, and keep praying. Shubhamastu.